Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Once again, I'm Michael Fumafreddo, and today we have the 2019 Severian Chess Club Championship match between Brandon Wade and Mark Molo. And today I'm joined by two very knowledgeable chess players in the booth, Chess Club President Andreas Capsalis and Chess Club Moderator Mr. Ascione. Andreas, let me start with you. I understand there's a lot of rules and regulations that are going on with this game.
Yes, so congratulations to Brandon and Mark for making it this far. Over 30 games were played in this championship, and they've made it a long way. Because Brandon Wade, it was a double elimination tournament. Because Brandon Wade made it to the championship with 0 losses, he's able to pick his color, which he chose white for the first game. And if it gets to a third game in a best of 3 series, Brandon will get to pick his color again. Mark will be black for the second game, so they can switch colors up. Each player will have a 12-minute timer to use at their own discretion. If someone's time runs out and the other player has enough pieces to checkmate the other player will be named victorious in that game. The first player to reach 2 victories in today's games will be named the champion and will receive the Onyx chess set that you can see in the front as donated by our moderator, Mr. Ascione. And I'm going to throw it over to him right now to say a couple of words.
Oh, I'm telling you, these guys deserve all the credit. Look at them, my gosh, they're going to give the best. We had the Yoo-hoo chocolate drink over there that is typical. Look at Mark Molo is drinking that. I think it's going to be a fantastic series. I'm really very excited. And good luck to everybody, guys.
Yeah, and with that, it looks like we are ready to start the match. There you go. You see the handshake that'll begin. The clock will start once Brandon Wade makes his first move. He'll be white for the first game.
You know, Brandon right now is moving his queen pawn up first. Him as a white player always likes to play the queen's gambit, making sure that he can set a good opening position, willing to sacrifice pieces. But Mark, on the other hand, opening with the king's Indian defense on the left side, trying to move his knight up, probably going to move his bishop up as well. There we go. Going to castle there, set up good defense for his king. Brandon actually chose not to go for the game. Instead, he's blocking off his left side bishop, but also setting up great white center control, which Mark doesn't really have right now.
Yeah, and you can see there the knight movement. That's actually a rule in chess where the knight's the only piece that's allowed to hop over a piece. You see off to a very quick start, both players setting up their defense. Mr. Ascione, is there anything you'd like to add?
Oh, I just saw a pawn on the king's side. It's a move that I hardly make. You know, it could be successful, but it's kind of dangerous at times. So let's see how it goes. But it looks like they know what they're doing.
Can I understand? How many people have beaten you in chess in the school?
No, it's not true. It happened. It will happen again, I'm sure, before the end of the day, I promise.
Yeah, so then we talk about the famous Yoo-hoo drink that you see Mark drinking on the left side of your screen. And Andreas says, what's the story with that drink?
Yeah, so we have a joke ever since last year when Mark lost in the semifinals. We see Hajar, other chess club president, holding up the Yoo-hoos right there. So Mark would bring in Yoo-hoos, and every time he brought in the Yoo-hoo, we make a joke that sponsors him, that he would actually perform better in the games. And if you notice, anytime that he doesn't drink Yoo-hoo during games, he usually underperforms. It may be a placebo, maybe a PED, we're unsure at this point.
Okay, you see there no pieces have been captured so far.
You know, it's really interesting. Mark, a very aggressive player compared to Brandon, a very defensive player. You see Brandon actually with a king's Indian of his own on the right side of the board today, with a bishop and knight set up protecting the castle, king, and rook. But Mark, on the other hand, going for an aggressive opening, has not yet castled. He's opened the castle on the queen side, but he's already brought his king out to try to take some center control. Currently moving his knight out to the left on a little outpost, trying to take a few pieces. But you see Brandon actually now taking the initiative to maybe try to trade a piece or two, setting up his knight to move a little more forward into the opponent's territory.
And so right now we see that Brandon Wade has just about 30 seconds less on his timer on than Mark does. Mr. Ascione, what do you think the time has to do with this match today?
Not a lot. This is not a very fast game by definition. 12 minutes, I consider that a long game. I think until we get down to the 5 minutes, 4 minutes mark, there is no very big difference in time control. Right now, I know, of course, we need to appreciate the fact that Mark is a little faster than Brandon at this point. But I would say that White right now is much more developed than Black. So I would say if everything holds true, White at this point has a better position. That doesn't mean much though because they still haven't traded pieces. So we gotta wait. We gotta wait.
And we see now that Mark pushing up his pawn, he actually can take the knight there, but if he does that, Brandon has his pawn set up all the way on the e file, ready to attack the queen of Mark. And if he were to make that trade off, Mark would be in a devastating position to try to win this game. So Mark right now has to move his queen, and as a result, is not going to get the opportunity to take Brandon's knight as a whole. But also, when he moves his queen, that pawn that Brandon has there on the e file is in great position for center control, protected by a pawn, protected by the knight on the right side of Brandon's pieces. You know, it's going to be a great position for Mark here, and as aggressive player as Mark is, because he doesn't have that as good of a position, it's going to be harder for him to win.
And there we see our first piece captured of the game, the pawn at, I believe that's e6. Mark captures Brandon's piece. And what I understand, Brandon, who just captured the knight that took over the pawn, is a much slower player than Mark, and maybe sometimes slower is better, as Brandon was the chess club runner-up in last year's tournament.
And you see that trade-off was pretty much beneficial for Brandon because his rook is protecting that e5 pawn, made it so the trade-off happened. Brandon keeps center control with the queen being forced to move, and Brandon, if he decides to play a little more aggressive than he usually does, can start chasing that queen around, try to trap it, maybe even go for a push on the left side with the queen stranded on the other.
Yeah, that move really made me upset, though. I kind of like the diagonal that he had going with the pawns from B to E in that situation. Now it's back again with the knight in place.
I think Mark made a blunder over there. I just want to see what he has in mind. But I would never surrender a knight like I did. Something went really wrong for him. But right now I see that the white knight is attacking the queen, and it doesn't look like that queen can really move a lot around. So something is definitely going Brandon's way, and Mark is a little bit in difficulty. I just want to see how he can get out of there.
And for a little context for the viewers, Brandon has actually beaten Mark every single time they played. And we see him laughing right now.
You might be able to hear us a little bit, maybe a little distracting for them, but
yeah, in fact, we need to a little bit. But we didn't discuss the referee of it. I mean, we have an exceptional one.
Yeah, so Mr. Daniel Hajar is sitting in the back right now, the referee of today's game. You see he's smiling for the camera. He actually won the chess club tournament last year, and he's currently sitting as president with me, refereeing the game, making sure that no illegal moves are made. Yeah, of course. If you see on the left side, right behind Mark, we see the little knight, black knight that the chess club and members of Mr. Shon's Italian class purchased for him at the end of last year. All of us signed on it, and it says Wednesday is coming, the catchphrase of our chess club, because that, of course, is when our dates are held.
And of course, that means the championship has to be held on Wednesday.
Yes.
Guys, I think we also need to move back a little bit for the next game or talk a little less because they seem to be hearing every word we're saying.
I agree. And
So yeah, we definitely see that the queen from Mark is in an interesting position as Brandon has yet to move his. Andres, what's the importance of the queen in the game of chess?
Especially for aggressive players like Mark, the queen could be the most important piece in the game. That's why you don't see players like him try to trade off as much. Because if you're an aggressive pusher, you need to have the versatility of the queen, where you can move diagonally, you can move front, backwards, sideways, more moves than any other piece could make. Which is why having the queen, you see him right now threatening the G file or the H file right now with that queen and the pawn pushing up there, could be looking to try to get a checkmate pretty quickly. But his defense is actually set up well on the right side. So if he were to lose that queen right now, he would lose the ability to be the aggressive style player that he is.
And how much make him switch to a defensive player then?
Yeah, Mark as a defensive player probably isn't as strong as he is as an offensive player. Thankfully, he still has his queen right now, and as a result, has that ability to continue to push, try to apply some pressure. Right now, it seems like a pretty even game. I think Brandon is down one pawn, but in the scope of things, where Brandon is a little better position, he's off to a better start.
Yeah, Mr. Ragione, from what I'm saying, let's talk about Brandon's side of the board for a little bit. We see him starting to move past the midway point with most most of his pieces. What kind of strategy do you think he's going for?
Right now, I guess he's still trying to develop his pieces. The thing that I think he's not doing correctly is he's keeping his left throw completely idle, and he should be brought back into the game. But right now, I just understand Mark simplifies another piece. It looks like this is a game of trading pieces, but I think the market is a little bit in difficulty at this point. Right? He's not really creating a lot of damage over there. I see Brandon very much in control of the game.
And if you notice as well, Brandon is actually up a piece now, having taken a bishop and a knight from Mark, but Mark has only taken a bishop and a pawn. So that's a huge advantage for Brandon, especially an aggressive player. Being down on pieces limits his ability to push well. And you see Brandon, his king's being a little active right now. That's pretty good for him. An aggressive player, if Brandon were to make a blunder, can take advantage of that fully.
You see Brandon's white king now in the G2 slot, while Mark's king occupying the C8 spot. Now, let me ask you a question. From what I hear Brandon likes to play defensively for a little bit most, right? Correct?
Yeah, so Brandon, if you notice at the start of the game, played what's called the King's Indian defense, where he castles on his king's side and places his knight and his bishop in front of the castle set in order to give them extra defense. And he still has a lot of his pawn structure set up there, and his bishop and knight are still in front of it, but just a little pushed up more. He likes to have strong defense on his king because Mark and aggressive players like him try to not push for huge trade-off games, try to get for a quicker checkmate. But if you notice, actually, now we talked about time a lot, but Mark isn't as far up on time. Right before that last couple moves, Mark was down on time to Brandon. So you see Brandon's playing well. He's making Mark think more, not playing to the game that he usually plays.
Yeah, the pressure definitely on for the championship match. Mr. Rashiani, did you teach Brandon Wade that defense move?
Oh, absolutely. That's all. I deserve a lot of credit for that. No, I'm just kidding. He just developed an excellent game. And by the way, looking at this game, that black queen looks like it's in big dire of escaping from that trap, because I didn't see much going on over there. I hope he can really make it. But I think that's what he's got in his mind right now. How do I get my queen out of that situation? Because here we go. If I'm escaping that from down the white diagonal over there, because I saw a lot of problems over there. So
another thing I'd like to know is that if you note, look at that, we see another pawn taken, and actually I would say Mark is starting to gain more center position. He may be down a little on pieces, but if he gains back in position, that could be a great start for him. And we see Brandon now pushing up that G-file pawn, making the queen escape and get out of there, because if that queen stays there, could pose a huge threat to checkmate later on. But now Brandon making sure it gets out of there is a much safer defensive move, which plays to him well.
And if you've noticed from those past couple moves, we've seen some players, some of the pieces actually pass the midway point of the board, but recently after captures, both sides have them on their own 4 squares. No one passed the midpoint of the board.
And also, if you notice on the E-file right now, Mark has a double pawn, and something he always likes to say is push past pawns. And past pawn is when there's no other pawn in the same file blocking it from moving down. So Mark, knowing him, he's going to try to push those pawns on the E-file as well, try to promote, because if that pawn gets to the end of the board, he promotes it. But you now see Brandon taking one of those pawns, trying to limit that past pawn ability. But if Mark again continues to push, he'll be able to get another queen.
There you see Mark taking the bishop, and I straight off there. I wonder how much left in that Yoo-hoo. Mr. Rashiani, how much Yoo-hoo do you think Mark has left?
I guess about 3 or 4 cans. It's difficult to think at least 3 or 4 during a game. So we should expect at least, they play 2 or 3 games? We should expect about 5 or 6 of them. I guess he carries them with him. He's the sponsor of the game, so I guess they donated a lot of this.
That's a lot of chocolate milk.
And right now again is the 2019 Chess Club Tournament Championship. We see our referee Dan Hajar stacking up the Yoo-hoos right next to Mark, showing how he has 4 of them, and how Mark, if he continues to drink those PEDs, may be in for a nice advantage here.
Yeah, I don't think we've touched upon the fact that Mr. Daniel Hajar is the referee of this contest, but let's talk about his role in this game for a little bit.
Yeah, so Hajar made it to, I think, the quarterfinals or semifinals of our tournament right now. Brandon won the winner's bracket, and it was Hajar versus Vice President Liam Burke. Liam actually won that game and then lost to Mark for Mark to make it all the way to the championship here. And, Dan Hajar, our president and actually reigning champion because he won our last tournament, has been doing very well in the chess club. He wins most of his games. He's one of the smarter players that we have, and great job for him to help out today. So thank you.
And you see now, time pretty much even. Brandon actually having a little more time because they both approach around having 5 minutes left in the game. Mr. Asciani, what do you think about the outlook of this game so far?
I do like White. I can't help it. I mean, it's much more developed, very aggressive. He's got a lot of possibilities. I guess Brandon knows what he's doing. It looks like he has a plan, which is good in chess, of course. Of course, it's got about 14 seconds, 15 seconds less on his clock. It's not really a big deal. I think this game will go down to the wire. I want to see somebody is able to checkmate the other one, otherwise the time becomes important.
I don't think Brandon's looked up from the board since this match started.
As well, Brandon has a rook on the left side, which he still has yet to put into use in today's game. If he continues to let that linger, it could provide a detriment to him, especially seeing because Mark's rook on the D file right now, and then we have his rook on the G file as well, with the queen posing a huge threat to the king on the left side of the board. And, Brandon doesn't get that other rook into play soon, and it could pose a huge threat. Mr. Asciani, in your games, in your experience, how important do you think the rooks are in the mid game, looking to end game?
The left rook plays a very important role. As a matter of fact, I try to keep my voice down because I don't want to give any suggestions. But I would say that also the 2 points in front of the left rook are instrumental for me at this point. Brandon should really make a move with that.
I do believe that Brandon's use of his queen has been very minimal to this point. Right now, it's in the, I believe, D1 slot. And yeah, I don't really think he's moved it though. Both kings on the other hand have been on the move.
Yes, I agree. But if anything, the black king looks like it's a little bit more like protected at this point. The white king is kind of reckless, but I don't see much going on over there.
Mr. Asciani, I have to cut you off 1 second. Andres just had a big reaction, so I'd like him to explain it.
Yeah, so if you look at Brandon right now, looking all smug right now, because he putting his knight there is placing a fork on the black queen and rook, meaning that there's going to be a positive trade-off for Brandon no matter what move Mark makes. He can either take the queen or the rook, 2 very strong pieces that are stronger than the knight, but by putting his knight in that position, unable to be taken, forking the 2 pieces, that's a huge advantage for Brandon, who's already up on pieces.
And just a rule that I picked up while playing second grade chess club back in the day: if you don't take your hand off the piece, it doesn't count as a move. And right now, you see that trade-off happening.
I want to go back to the smile of Brandon Wade. It reminds me of the smile of the Gioconda, of Mona Lisa at the Louvre. Very enigmatic. I would say, pretty good stuff I'm seeing in this game. Let me tell you.
What I'd say is Mark has a nice advantage with the queen on the F file, pinning down the knight there. You see the knight from the king is unable to move, unable to be active, because if it does, the king will be in check, meaning that knight is pinned. So, Mark having his queen there poses a huge threat there, even though the knight is protected.
One piece that Mark should move right now is you, because it's kind of blocking the view. Thank you, Mark, for moving your piece.
I think the white is becoming extremely aggressive. I would definitely go for the trade of queens at this point. I would trade almost any pieces because white is a big advantage.
Yeah, Brandon still hasn't really used his queen now. You see Mark's queen all the way up at the F4 file now. And time's starting to wind down. Both players around the 3-4 minute mark left to play.
And to give another update, so the chessboard you see in front right now was donated by our moderator, Mr. Asciani. It's an Onyx chess set that will be given to the champion of today's 3-game set. And the knight in the back was donated by the chess club and Mr. Asciani's Italian class. And of course, we see Mark and Brandon facing off right now. Both have played a lot of games to lead up to this point, and it's looking like this game is just as close as all the others. 2 great players right now.
And I'd like to know that we have a very big, large crowd behind us right now watching this game. I think this might be the most viewed stream of all time currently. And we did the football homecoming game.
It reminds me of the 70s when Fisher played Spowski and all the interest that generated, and 2,000 people watching this game. Let me tell you. And by the way, it's streamed live, isn't it?
It is being streamed live right now.
That's good. I hope a lot of Salvadorian people are tuned in right now.
Also, the winner of this match will be featured on this week's episode of WXBN, so if you want to check that out to see who wins if you miss the end of this match. And Andreas, like to just we've had some time. We just saw a trade of queens there. Why don't you explain that now for us?
Yeah, I actually think that's a blunder on Mark's part because him currently being down pieces and an aggressive player, he kind of needs his queen to try to stay in this game right now. But Brandon, because he's up on a decent amount of pieces, having both rooks and a knight, when we only see Mark right now, I guess only having one rook, Brandon's in a huge piece advantage, and trading away the main aggressive piece could be a huge threat right now. The king's in check, we're going to see Brandon have to move it, and the king, if Mark capitalizes as well, could be put in a nice trap here with a lot of pieces walking around it. And Brandon is reacting very slowly to this development. I guess it's wasting a lot of time. I would say the playing pawns at this point becomes very instrumental. The king doesn't really belong in the middle of the board, so let's see what happens. But I think that the clock right now is definitely in favor of Mark.
Yeah. And Andreas, why don't you just please explain to us the rules if there's a stoppage of time? Because it seems like there's a lot of pieces left, and Brandon's running out of time, only a minute and a half left to play.
So what essentially happens if someone runs out of time, it doesn't necessarily have to be a loss for that player. Let's say Brandon runs out of time, but because Mark has enough pieces where he could theoretically put Brandon in check, Mark would gain the win. But if Mark only had his king or a king and a knight, for example, which is not enough pieces to put a king into checkmate, it would end in a draw even if Brandon ran out of time.
So does he have enough pieces at the moment?
Yes, he does. We see like 4 or 5 pawns. A rook, he would have to lose literally all of those in order for Brandon to force the draw if he were to run out of time. Mark's a very fast player. He could be playing very smart right now, forcing Brandon to run out of time and trying to get him to lose.
I would say this game would definitely be decided on the clock. I didn't see any checkmate developing at this point. So I guess the clock becomes extremely important. Brandon needs to be a little bit faster.
And you see that move right there by Mark, moving his rook all the way down to h2. That forces the knight to move, and while doing so, puts the king in a nice trap where he can't move backwards. And Mark's pawns, if they start pushing forward, add more spaces where the king can't move. But Mark, a very defensive player, is forcing Brandon to make moves and think about the moves more importantly to try to get him to run out of time. That was, I think, the 16-second move.
Yeah, and you just see there Brandon moving that knight all the way to e5 now. And just an update, Mark is currently on his second Yoo-hoo.
Yeah, I saw him reach for the Yoo-hoo drink. I guess it means business.
Brandon waiting now less than 30 seconds to play.
You see Brandon right there is the rookie just placed, putting Mark the king into check is protected by the knight, so it can't be taken right now. And if Brandon were to, he's capitalizing, taking the pieces of Mark, he has to move quickly though. Ideally to suggest a move maybe, try to get that rook more active. That could set a great pace for checkmate. But you see Mark right now, trying to make Brandon think, especially 18 seconds left, not a lot of time, could force Brandon to take the loss in this first game.
And I just saw a very interesting move there. Brandon moving that rook one spot over to the b1 slot, and that actually limits Mark's ability to capture that pawn right there. And now as you see, he's got the king in check.
You see the king in check, forcing Brandon to think even more. 10 seconds left is huge for Mark. Mark's trying to move quickly. He doesn't necessarily have to, but Brandon has to move quicker.
You see, he takes that.
What I can really make him, if probably, I would say that he didn't see a good move, but those two rooks can make the black king, but he's gonna move. I guess he didn't see it. he should go down with the rook from the first flank up to the next to the last one, and he just makes into moves. That's it.
Yeah, see, Brandon can capitalize on that. It won't take 5 seconds to do. He just needs to be smart about his move right now, and he could, regardless of time, win this game.
It should be interesting to see how this match plays out, but don't go anywhere once this match is over. We still have possibly 2 more games left. Mr. Ascione, what else are you seeing now? As time is running down?
I see a mate. There is a mate in 1 second, but I guess the brand is not seeing it.
And, it's especially important right now because this has been a very close game, and, Mark is one that, this game was supposed to be 10 minutes. If it were that way, the game would already be over. But because, Mark is actually taking his time right now, he knows he has Brandon in place where Brandon has to act. Only 2 seconds left now.
And he just took that rook away.
I just don't get it.
Brandon down to less than a second.
In this time, you see Brandon Wade has lost now. You see Brandon Wade saw the move, and Mark has won his first game, the first game of this 3-game set. The handshake there, great sportsmanship from the 2 players. It was a close game throughout. We see the referee Daniel Hajar right now resetting the board. Hopefully they're going to take a minute or 2 break. Try to relax a bit before this next game. If Mark were to win this next game, he wins the championship, wins the board. But Brandon, on the other hand, has to come back from the 2-game deficit.
And you see our commentator, Mr. Ascione, going there for the handshake. We still have possibly 2 more games now. Let's see what Brandon Wade can do to bounce back. And we have another visitor into the booth. Deacon Mack has arrived.
He is really in shock, acknowledging the camera.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting here. DK Mac supporting the chess club, of course. It's great to see him stop in and say hi to the players, hi to Mr. Ascione and everyone here to attend. We still have a huge group behind us watching this game. They reset the clocks. Actually, it's supposed Brandon will now be playing on black here, so that's great. Making sure to thank you, Daniel Hajar, for setting up the board for them. It's going to be a close game. As a defensive player, of course, you love to have white be able to set the tempo for the game early, but Mark now has a strong ability to be able to capitalize, maybe be even more risky than he usually is because he has that 1-game cushion.
We'll see how it plays out. Both guys having a minute to have a minute to themselves, basically, and talk it over. Maybe say hi to some people. Well, game 2 looking to get right underway.
I'm all excited, let me tell you. This game delivered everything that we were waiting for. And I would say, if you allow me, that was a game for White to lose. And he didn't see an easy chessmate. I guess he was really pressured with time.
And we have Deacon Mack right behind us. Would you like to say hi to the folks watching at home?
This is what a tremendous experience this is, and to see these 2 guys really battling out. I wanted to yell and scream, but Mr. Ascione said I couldn't, and that it was very intense. But what a delight! I'm so proud of not only what they're doing in there and the good work Mr. Ascione does, but I'm also proud of you guys with your play-by-play and getting involved. So I got the greatest job in the world, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Deacon Mack.
That's a great endorsement.
Yeah, thank you, Deacon Mack, for your words of kindness. We're now going to call in Daniel Hajar, the referee, to ask him his thoughts on the first game. He was right there in the action, was able to see the reactions of the 2 players, and we're going to ask him for predictions moving forward.
It was definitely a heated game. Both of the competitors were very into the game. They didn't bat an eye. There were a couple times where Mark have traded, and it could have been a more even game. Brandon was up at the end, but Brandon was running out of time. He likes to think of his moves, as you can tell. There was one time also where Brandon could have trapped the queen, but he slipped on that. There's a lot of pressure at time. You see moves that they don't see because they're thinking about that clock only and wanting to get that next move off to try and blunder their opponent.
Congratulations, Mr. Hajar. Great referee with that.
So are you staying with us, or will Andreas be the referee of this match?
I'm not sure. I'll go back with it.
Well, either way, we'll have another highly educated chess expert in the booth along with Mr. Ascione.
No, I can leave it there if you want. The other place. I can be the referee.
With game 2 getting started, what do you expect from both players?
Well, no, I expect Brandon to be a little bit more aggressive because, I mean, he did deliver the best game. I have to be sincere. I would have bet for his winning, but then I told you, I mean, it looked like he was having problems with the clock. He couldn't really deliver fast. I'd say that if I had been Brandon, I would push like a 15, 16-minute game rather than 12. I would say that the time control at this point is more in favor of a fast attacker, of even fast defense, fast mover, like Mark.
Yeah, we saw that sense of urgency come out, Brandon, though, in the last 10 seconds that he had.
They can hear everything.
Oh, yeah? Everything? How come?
The glasses that move back a little bit.
All right, I'm going to be ready for this second game, all right? So I'm going to be the referee, so maybe we can be over here.
That'd be very fun.
So I'm going to go there, I'm going to raise my horse over there.
So we'll actually see a new referee for this matchup. It'll be Mr. Ascione. Mr. Hajar, however, will join us in the booth, along with Mr. Capsalis. And game 2 starting very shortly. We'll be right back. One or two.
So I got the hot seat now. Yeah. Yeah, it's the best of first.
I'm a Philistine.
I make feelings of no.
I'm sorry.
I'm sure that they call it.
I'll just do
Normally interesting, you don't have to technically, but it's like
you could go quick. You have to pay as much attention to that.
I also like to make sure.
Yeah.
Did you hear what was being said?
I heard it.
I gotta tell you,
I thought it was a golf thing when you saw it. It was like,
very impressive. The enough stuff you have to say is like.
I hate watching games because I just seem like we hate watching. We see moves that you just want to make them. Michael,
When you actually want to save the game, or is it just real life? Oh, that's great.
Mr. Ashon, are you ready?
Yes, all right.
ready? All right, get them out of the room. Get them out of the room.
it's all for them.
We're sponsored by you, by the way. We're gonna be getting the school.
Guys are very clever.
No, they were just watching. They're bodyguards. They're bodyguards. They should know who's walking in the room.
And we're ready for game 2 now. As you may notice, we had to move back because players were saying that they could hear everything we said. But now Mark's white, so he will have the first move.
You know, it's interesting to see what Mark's going to do here. Looks like he's moving king pawn up first. An interesting move from him. It allows him to move the bishop out, the queen out, off the get-go. And it looks like he's probably going to move his knight out now, putting pressure on that pawn from Brandon. Brandon brings a pawn out as well to defend it. We are also joined by Mr. Daniel Ajara, referee. If he has any comments or what he thinks so far of this game.
Yeah, I was just about to say, welcome to the booth. You were in the room for the first game. What were your thoughts?
They were making a lot of mistakes, but you have to expect it. You have to expect it. There's a timer. There's a lot of pressure. A lot of people are watching. You have to expect mistakes to happen. But both of them are playing really well right now. Classic opening, classic defense. Now you're going to see where the board gets exciting, where they're going to open up into their own clever openings, and we'll see how the game progresses.
I understand you were actually champion last year.
Yes, I was.
What happened?
What happened this year? Yeah. This year, so I was a little rusty during the tournament. I played against Mark, the kid that's in the championship right now, in the normal bracket, and it was a double elimination, and I lost because I was a rusty. I could take him 100%, but I lost. I was sent to losers. I was sent to losers, and it was a hard climb on the way up. I had to play against really good players. So.
Right now we see a great move by Mark doing what Brandon did to him last game with the fork on the right side of the board. You see his knight is defended by the bishop, and he's putting pressure on the queen or the rook right now. No matter where Brandon moves, he's going to lose one of those pieces, which is a negative trade-off for him. So great aggressive opening by Mark, protecting it with the bishop, moving his king out now. He's going to take the rook, positive trade-off for him, and Brandon can't even take that now because no piece is defending it. But if you see Brandon on the right side of the board, has a nice defense setup, going for the queen side right there.
Does Mark already have 2 pieces on the opposite side of the board?
Yeah, he does. Dan Hajar, you're a pretty aggressive player as well. What do you think of what Mark's doing right now?
Mark doing exactly what I would do in this scenario, attack Brandon. You can't let Brandon sit back. He's just going to set up a very good strong defense that is just hard to attack. And as you can see, Mr. Ashana hiding the yoo-hoos from Mark because it's powering him too much. but Mark's doing exactly what he should be doing. Attack, attack, attack. He can't let Brandon set up his pawns and his knights, and he just took out 2 very strong pieces. So that's going to give Mark a upper hand in the final.
Yeah, and I don't know if we touched on this earlier, but Mark is only a junior, as Brandon is a senior. So if Mark were to win today, he'd have a chance to do what Hajar couldn't do and defend his title next year. Anyway, both players have taken about a minute and a half so far in this game, but as we've seen in most sports in Severian history, like momentum is key. And do you think Mark's got momentum right now?
Yeah, Mark, being such an aggressive player he is, his confidence and mental state going into games and every single move is of the utmost importance. And coming right off a win where Brandon had great positioning, he continues to have great positioning like he had last game. He can probably come out with a win this game. But, Mark forcing Brandon to run out on time is a huge factor in these games right now. But Mark, still having his knight on the other side of the board, hasn't been taken yet. He's down a rook and he's down Brandon's down a rook and a knight, and another trade-off there. Brandon should be trying to trade as little pieces as possible because he's down on points, and Mark now castling to have some better defense. But being down a whole rook at this point in the game as we're entering the mid game could be huge for Brandon, especially because he's defensive. Rooks being huge defense is key to have.
Yeah, everything is going well for Mark right now. The one thing that Brandon has a little over him is that Brandon's pieces, strong pieces, are a little more developed. As you can see, Mark's entire left side of the board is completely blocked off. He can't get that knight out, the bishop out, or that rook out, which is not helping his case. Brandon already has bishop out. He's 2 bishops out and his queen, and has potential to take out one of his rooks. And the time definitely playing a factor on Brandon. Brandon has to make swift moves so he can get on the offensive quickly.
Yes, we saw a lot of trade-offs in that last bit of commentary. Brandon, on one hand, took away Mark's bishop and knight. But Andreas, what do you think that had to do with the game so far?
With Brandon came with a strong comeback. He was down a rook and a knight. Now he's only down the rook. Strong play by Brandon to try to set up a little more. Sort of expected to happen with Mark's knight all the way hidden on the h8 spot today's game. But if you see Brandon, in order for him to try to win this game, need to get that rook on the h8 spot into the E or G files to, try to strengthen his board a little more, take over the center of the board, get position, because, the defense of Brandon with the pawns and pieces is pretty solid right now. Same for Mark. But if Brandon can apply some pressure, it could poise to be a good move for him.
Yeah, and what I've noticed so far is Brandon's actually taken a bit of Mark's approach from the last game, being more aggressive with his queen. It currently sits at the C5 spot, and we like to think of Brandon as a defensive player, but he can definitely turn aggressive. What do you think about that, Dan?
Oh, no, 100%. Brandon's playing this game very aggressive, as he should be. He shouldn't be sitting back when he's down pieces. When you're down pieces, you have to try and get those pieces right back. And as you can see, Mark just opened up that left side of the board, getting that bishop out, which is crucial, threatening that queen. Brandon's going to have to do something here. He has to either push back or push a little forward to try and attack those knights.
And to give some history right now, in the winner's bracket semifinals, it actually was Mark versus Brandon, and Mark was up on pieces and Brandon was down, but Brandon came out with the victory because Mark had a couple blunders. We hope we don't see that again today. But, you know, Brandon is definitely very opportunist type of chess player where if he sees a blunder, he's able to capitalize on it well. So it's important to make sure Mark takes his time in today's game. You know, usually Mark, an aggressive, fast player, tries to go quickly, but because he already has that one-game cushion, he can take his time now and, you know, try to play a little smarter than usual, not take as many risks.
Yeah, and you also see Brandon has about 30 seconds less than Mark currently. As you see a nice trade-off of pieces there. Dan, what do you see in that last couple moves?
If I'm Brandon in that situation, I don't know if I would trade right away. I mean, you're already on pieces. That trade did advance his queen a little bit, but not enough to really make that big an impact. He doesn't have another supporting piece to help that queen out except for that white bishop, which can't really do much on that side of the board as his pawns are blocking off every single lane. So I don't agree with that bishop trade right away, but you never know. He might have a strategy up his sleeve.
And, you know, Brandon right now, he's doing actually very well in time compared to last game. I'm seeing him and Mark being pretty even right now. But, you know, Brandon, you know, is playing well after the first blunder at the start. You know, he's gaining pieces, he's gaining position, which is great to see from a great player like him. But, you know, if he can just make sure his time is good, he should be in a good place in this game if he continues to play the way he is. And as long as on Mark's end, if he doesn't make any blunders and make sure that he's smart with his play, takes time, he should be good to win this game as well.
And I just want to go back to the last game really quick. Mr. Ascione was saying that he did see a little bit of a checkmate possibility towards the end of that game. Danny, did you see that at all?
100%. Brandon had a checkmate in 2 moves, but Mark played that very, very well. He kept checking the king, even though he was throwing those pieces at him. It didn't matter because Brandon was going to run out of time anyways. And if he didn't check the king, Brandon, as he did, he caught Brandon off guard and managed to basically double guess his move because he was so ready to make that, and Mark kept tossing pieces at him to just run out the clock. Very, very good play by Mark.
And, you know, right there we see Mr. Ascione and Mr. Wade exchanging looks, smiling because he made a great move, moving the king down all the way to the second file in today's match. You know, he poses a huge threat to the rook on A1, but also a threat on the whole 2 file, you know, with that king being there, the rook, posing more threats to that as it goes, especially with his bishop on the long white diagonal. Even though the pawn's blocking it, it could pose for a major threat to Mark for a quick checkmate in today's game.
Yeah, I was just about to comment on Brandon's moving of the queen all the way into that E2 slot. Dan, what do you think the benefits are of having a queen that far up on the board?
It definitely increases your ability to capture big pieces because you get into a scenario in which your power piece is able to basically fork other pieces, which as you just did right there. And it was a smart play by Mark to not sacrifice one of his rooks in this type of game because those rooks are going to be essential as there are not many knights on the board. So. Yeah.
You see with that move by Brandon, very great move, but Brandon is now just barely, I think, 2 points down in the system today. You know, he has taken every bishop and every knight of Mark's plus an extra pawn, and Mark has taken the rook, 2 knights, and a bishop. You know, Brandon having that bishop posing a threat to the pawn all the way on G2 is huge for him in today's game, especially because that's a checkmate spot if he were to move the queen up as well. But, you know, with Mark today, if he can set up his defense a little better, you know, he's putting the queen in a trap right now, trying to get the queen out of there, stop posing a threat. It could be good for him moving forward. And, you know, Mark and Brandon also on time, doing very well. Mark is just trying to take his time, play smart, try to get the queen out of there in order for him to have a little more of a safe haven.
You keep bringing up these point systems. Can you just explain what that means?
Yeah, so essentially a pawn is worth in the actual determination of results of a chess game, the points aren't a factor, but points are used for an sort of objective measure to see who's up in terms of the game. So a pawn, so Mark's now on his third Yoo-hoo opening flow. That's the power move right there. A pawn is 1 point, a rook is 5 points, a queen is 9 points, and bishops and knights are 3 points each. So you see with a pawn and 4 3-point pieces down, Mark is down 13, and Brandon, having lost a pawn, a rook, and 3 other pieces, he's down 15. So, only a 2-point difference in today's game. Position is pretty close. Brandon being a little more aggressive, but also Mark with the queen all the way down on the 7 file. We could see this game really turn any way.
How many points is a finished Yoo-hoo?
A finished Yoo-hoo, I think, could be a whole 89 points, maybe 90, depending on when you drink it.
That's a lot of points. And not much capturing recently. We just see an exchange of pawns right there. Dan, do you see anything getting set up on the board currently?
Right now, I see Mark trying to develop his pawns on the right side of the board, maybe try and push for an extra queen this early on. If he gets another queen this early on, that could be very devastating to Brendan. But Brendan can also defend a couple ways. I just take that pawn as he just did because I was not defended by anything. So.
Mark's famous strategy of pushing past pawns, always on the right side. You see right now he has 2 passed pawns with his queen defending it as well. So
past pawns.
So you see Mark smiling there. He knows what's coming, and if he starts to push those pawns on the H file, it could be huge to pose a threat for checkmate later in the game, and huge for Mark in the scope. Brandon, as a defensive player, should be able to stop it. His queen is still posing a huge threat, so Mark has to be careful and not push too far without recognizing Brandon's moves to develop pieces more.
Yeah, Mark's queen quietly made its way to the other side of the board. That's the A7 slot that it is in right now, and Brandon now a minute and a half less time than Mark right now, and we know that Brandon likes to take his time. So what do you think is going through his mind right now? How can he come back into his match and hopefully win the time he has?
Right now, if I'm Brandon's scenario, with the time he has on it, I play the end game. I try and fortify a solid defense for his king. Try not to lose any stupid pieces. Try to just gain pawn by pawn. And as he loses a pawn right there, I don't know if I would have done that as Brandon, unless he has a strategy with that queen down there.
Actually the bishop that went down.
Oh, was that the bishop? Oh, I thought that was a pawn. Oh, that is very devastating for Brandon. Oh my God, Mark up with a minute and almost 2 minutes basically. Mark looks like he got this.
Mm-hmm. Mark being an incredibly smart and strong player right now, still posing a huge threat with that queen. He's holding it right now, looking to move it, and there we go. Maybe being a checkmate as we see today. Brandon probably can move into the E8 slot right now. Yeah, but A8 slot, but he can think that's his only move. He's posing a huge mate right now. But thankfully, Brandon queen over there on the A file is able to come in if need be to try to defend.
That rook.
The rook as well, playing on the 8 file, gives him the ability to try to defend this push right now. But Mark, he's probably going to bring the rook over there. He does it. Trying to make a huge push to him right now, because if he gets that 3rd rook down there, it could be the end of the game for Brandon.
Mark right now is probably thinking to line up that entire C file, because in that case he could just straight out with that with the rook and the queen and just be up and probably mate in about 3 moves. I don't see, unless Brandon trades queens right now, I don't see how Brandon could do anything right now. And Brandon also would have to worry about that right side of the pawn. I don't see how Mark can lose this game.
I think Mr. Ascione might see something as well. Right now, eyeing that board like he's the player in this game right now. But you see Brandon's king in the corner. What's that spot mean on a chess game, the corner slots? Does it have any significance?
Yeah, so the corner very much limits the ability. We see mate in 1 right now, according to Hajar. Can you explain it a little?
Not anymore, because Brandon just made a very good move. He saw the move. If his queen moved to the B2, the B7 file, that would have made. There wouldn't have been anything they could do. But Brandon did what he should have done. He sacrificed queens. He traded out queens, and now Brandon has 3 pawns against Mark's 6, and Mark also has 2 rooks. And Brandon's down a full minute basically. I don't see how Mark loses.
Yeah, especially you see Mark on the right side pushing that pass pawn. You know, he's probably going to try to get a rook over there to give extra defense. Brandon's probably going to move C rook all the way over to H eventually, try to set up even more defense. But, you know, he could also move it forward, try to put an aggressive push on 2 file of Mark's to try to take over some extra pieces and maybe push some of his own pieces. You see him actually opting to move his rook to the G file, posing another threat. But if he would move that pawn up, it wouldn't be threatened anymore. Now we see Mark even more moving his rook forward, trapping that king. Right now the king only has 2 spaces it could move to, and Mark will probably move the other rook over to defend and try to go for another checkmate. Very aggressive moves here.
So right now Brandon not quite in check, but do you see anything coming possibly?
Actually, Brandon right now can climb up on pawns and almost get the same amount of pawns as Mark, as he just did right there, taking that H4 pawn. No, it's 4. He has that one on the. That's a very strong pawn on the A file, and that can do a lot of damage getting that extra queen.
And Mark actually made an incredibly smart move by moving his king forward. We're moving into the end game stage of this tournament and game specifically right now, and you know, you try to move your king up, give an extra defense and offensive position to the pawns you're trying to push forward. Brandon moving up, going for a trade. I think that was a blunder on his part, losing another piece. And now if you look at that pawn, it could push very far forward to try to get another queen. And there you go, Mark pushing that pass pawn 2 moves away from getting another queen. But you see Brandon trying to defend it, but you know, I see mate in 1 right now. If you move that rook, if you move that rook, you see mate in 1.
Marcus not paying attention either. Brandon, oh my god. Oh my god. Brandon has to move his king up 1 piece and he could save it. Brandon has to move his king to that A3. That A6 file.
You know what we're talking about specifically? Oh, there we go. That's mate in 1. If he moves, no, he still does not move it. You see, what we're talking about here is the rook on the D1 spot. Moving over to A1 is just a flat-out checkmate right now. There's no way to defend it unless the rook moves down. If Mark sees it, it's series over.
This is looking to get intense. What's that queen move mean?
Brandon just saved the game for himself. Moving that king up prevents that checkmate from happening, because if Mark moves that D1 pawn, he just takes that rook, and that is not a mate. Mark has to get his rook to one of the sides of the board, and Brandon just brought his attention to that side of the board, and I see that's game. That's game.
I don't see a way. Actually, no. You know, Brandon taking that pawn gives the ability to block a potential checkmate. If I were Mark, I'd put the king in check and potentially take the rook later on, go for a trade-off, and push the pawns on the right side, get a queen, you get the game.
I completely agree with that statement. Right now, if I'm Mark, I check him now, force that rook trade, and just make it a one-on-one. Have that rook in your back pocket, just put that rook behind that pawn, and that's game over, and just have that king take care of the pawn in that team. But right now, I don't. Brandon's in a really tough situation. He really can't move that rook much, or else it's game over.
And even more so, you see Mr. Ascione looking befuddled right now as to what Mark's doing. But also Mark, you know, secret strategy, has another Yoo-hoo laying down behind him. He has the Yoo-hoo that could pose huge to win today's game.
I thought you were about to give away a really secret strategy on how checkmate was about to happen, but really just another Yoo-hoo. Do you think he gets that 4th Yoo-hoo?
You know, maybe he won't.
Brandon just moved into mate. Brandon just moved into mate. Mark is your 2019 winter champion of the chess club. What a great game between these two. Man.
You know, we see congratulations to Mark. Congratulations to Mark. He now wins the Onyx chess set, which will be given to him. You know, Mr. Ascione brought it in, gracious gesture to donation. Congratulations to Mark. Well deserved.
And that's all the time we have for today. What a match, really. One of the more exciting matches we've done on Severian Live. Once again, I'm Michael Humafredo. Have a fantastic rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Once again, congratulations to Mark Marlowe, your 2019 Severian Chess Club champion.